The world is again on its toes for the coronavirus hybrid mutant Omicron XE. The WHO said this strain is the most transmissible yet. Is there a reason to worry? Let's get the insights of Dr. Paul Offit from the US FDA Vaccines Advisory Committee. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word. How concerned are you about the Omicron XE?
Right. So what this strain is in addition to being more contagious, it's also more immune evasive, like the Omicron variant or that so-called BA2 subvariant. This really is a combination of the two. By immune evasive, what I mean is that even if you've been, say, infected or been either naturally infected before or you've been vaccinated before, you could still get a mild illness. So the answer to the question, am I worried about it, is no, to the extent that vaccination still appears to protect against severe illness. That hasn't changed. I think when a variant arises that shows that even if you've been vaccinated, you still could get a severe illness, then I think it's time to worry. But for right now, the vaccines do appear to protect against serious illness, which is the goal of the vaccine.
Because at the moment, it is already in the neighborhood of the Philippines. There was a case in Thailand, which is about 3 hours away from the Philippines, and we do not know if it has already entered Philippine shores. What do you say, doctor, is the best strategy against Omicron XE? Is it another booster, a second booster?
Well, for right now, it does look like it depends on your age and whether or not you're immune compromised. I think if you're over 65 years of age, there probably makes sense to get a second booster. If you have comorbidities, meaning other health problems that put you at risk of severe disease, I think if you're immune compromised, I think it helps to get obviously another dose. But for the most part, the goal is protection against severe illness. And it looks like if you're a healthy young person and you've been vaccinated, I don't think you need another booster, no. Because the problem with the booster is, what are you boosting? You're boosting neutralizing antibodies in your circulation, which will help protect you against mild disease for a few months and then will come down by 6 months. So you can't keep getting boosters.
You mentioned over 65 years old and immunocompromised, because the FDA and the CDC in the United States are saying that you should be getting a second booster if you are 50 years old. So you don't agree with that, Dr. Offit?
No, I don't. I think that's based on a study out of Israel that looked at people basically over 65 who had a high instance of comorbidities. And there it was shown that a fourth dose made a difference. So I think if you're over 65 and you have multiple comorbidities like obesity or chronic lung or heart or liver or kidney disease, then I think it makes sense to get another dose. But I think for right now, it doesn't, because remember, I wouldn't consider that a booster. What I would consider that is your primary series has now become an additional dose. I think the term booster is misleading, because what you're boosting is you're boosting neutralizing antibodies, which are short-lived. And if you're trying to keep neutralizing antibodies up, then you're going to have to receive 2 boosters every year for years to come, which is not a sound public health strategy.
So what do you think is a sound public health strategy, Dr. Offit?
I think to establish for whom this vaccine is a 2-dose vaccine, 3-dose vaccine, and 4-dose vaccine. I think it's a 4-dose vaccine for people who are immune compromised. I think it's a 4-dose vaccine for people over 65 who have multiple comorbidities. I think it's a 3-dose vaccine for any age, frankly, over 12 that has comorbidities. And I think otherwise, for healthy people less than 50 years of age, it remains a 2-dose vaccine.
In the Philippines, the cases are really down, Dr. Offit, to pre-Omicron levels. Infections, hospital utilization, deaths are also down. What are the risks of another surge happening?
Well, I think for the most part, it's a winter virus. So we're also seeing dramatically lower numbers here in the United States as we move into March, April, and now May. I think that also happened last year, even when we had much less population immunity. I suspect what will happen is we hit fall, late fall, and early winter, there will again be an increase, as we see with human coronaviruses, as we see with other winter respiratory viruses. I imagine, though, however, that as this year, as we come to this winter, it would be much less of an increase as compared to the previous winter, because we have a much higher level of population immunity, either from vaccination or natural infection, or both.
All right, Omicron XE, a hybrid of the BA1 and the BA2 subvariants. Are the days of the Delta over now, Dr. Offit, or could it still resurface?
Well, I think the goal of the virus is to become more contagious, and that's what it continues to do. I mean, the virus that raised its head in Wuhan was not the virus that left China. The virus that left China was the first variant, the D614G variant, which was replaced by the Alpha variant because it was more contagious, which was replaced by the Delta variant because it was more contagious, which was replaced by the Omicron variant because it's more immune evasive and contagious, and now the BA2 variant. And that's what the virus is doing. It's just its goal is to be able to be transmitted efficiently from one person to the next. But the hope is that the virus does not mutate away from protection against severe disease induced by vaccination. And that hasn't happened yet. So that's the good news.
When do you think are we going to see the endemic phase, Dr. Offit?
When do I think we're going to see the end of this pandemic?
Yes.
I think whenever it's whatever we decide. I mean, 2 years before this pandemic hit in the United States, we had 800,000 hospitalizations from influenza and 60,000 deaths. We choose to live with that. I think there's going to be a number of cases and a number of hospitalizations and a number of deaths with this virus that we're going to say, okay, this is an endemic virus. I'm not going to change the way I work or play or live. And when that happens, then the virus has become endemic.
Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Paul Offit from the U.S. FDA Vaccines Advisory Committee.